Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm glad you're here. Here is another in my Christmas card series, and I'm going to be using Inktense pencils and this adorable little stamp. I purchased this stamp on Amazon, and I think it's called PAWS for Christmas. And it has two of the most adorable little puppies on it, playing with Christmas presents, and I just thought it was lovely. I'm going to create a card with each of those dogs and some Inktense pencils. I have a tin of 12. I have a water brush, some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, my XL watercolor pad. I'm going to cut two regular card fronts, one for each of the pups. And I'm using a stamping platform because with watercolor paper you often have to ink up twice. It's a little bit thicker and a different texture to regular cardstock, so it takes just a little extra care. Now I'm inking up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is permanent ink when dry, and the watercolouring won't affect this ink. I like to rub over with a tissue, and I'm going to give it a second inking. And I'll do the same with the other dog. And just changing where the sentiment is. For this little pup, I'm having the sentiment at the top. For the other little pup, I had the sentiment at the bottom. Inking that up again. And now we're ready for the colouring. I have a beautiful fine tip water brush. I've filled up my brush and I'm going to charge it up on a paper towel just to make sure that there's some water right down in the bristles. And I'm choosing some Inktense pencil colours. I'm going to be using Baked Earth, and I'll use this for the fur of both dogs. And for the colouring, I'm starting with the darkest colours first, or the darkest shadow areas first. And I'm laying down outlines, or rough lines, I should say, where the outlines of the stamp are. And if you see a lot of lines in the stamp image, that generally means that that is a shadow area. So the bottom of the legs, the sides of the legs, the tummy, underneath the paw. You can see I'm sort of making a round shape around the muzzle. Now I'm going to bring in some poppy red, and I'm going to lay this on as well so that this will mix when I add the water to it. So I'm adding a little bit under the chin, in the ears, on the tongue, under that first paw that's held up there. And as I use the water, it's going to mix with the other colour. You can see I'm leaving a highlight around the nose. So it's important when you do the colouring that you start off with your darks, but remember to maintain some lights, because you'll have plenty of opportunity for the mid-tones, which is the general colouring, like the upper part of his face there. But the lights you need to leave. That's why I've left quite a bit of light around the muzzle and some light at the top of the head and at that front paw that seems to be sitting forward. Everything else I'm just blending. I'm not squeezing the water in the brush. It's just damp bristles. Now I'm using apple green, and I'm going to colour the Christmas bauble. And I'm going to leave a little bit of highlight around the middle. pulling it out with the water brush, just with the dampness on the bristles. There is very little water that gets used in this application, so you don't need to tape your paper down or anything like that. Now I'm bringing in some Tangerine for the top of the bauble and just colouring that directly with pencil. I won't be blending that out. Next is some ink black, and that is for the nose. And again, I'm leaving some highlighted areas there too and just dotting in the eyes. And I try to keep their faces as rounded as possible. Now that same apple green I'm using on the present. Derwent Inktense pencils are highly versatile water-soluble pencils which create ink-like colour when combined with water. Due to its permanence, once dried, Inktense can be worked over without affecting the previous layer. It doesn't wash out like watercolour, and you can layer up intense vibrant colours. It's very similar to the process of glazing when you're using watercolour paints, where you darken the shades by adding an extra layer over the top once the layer is dry. You can see how vibrant that red ribbon has become. And when you're colouring in, you don't need to colour in every tiny little piece with your pencil, because your water brush will actually be moving that ink around for you. Now I'm using leaf green, which is more like an olive green, which gives a darker shade. And I'm going to bring that in on the other card as well. So this is for the small bow and the dots on the larger present. And I really like this colour scheme. I think it works beautifully together. I only have 12 Inktense pencils. I think that's a good place to start. You can always buy them individually if you want more. But I think it makes it easy to plan a colour scheme when Derwent have already selected the colours for you. You can see me going back in and adding even more depth of colour. So I'm adding in some more of that colour again. And this time when I put the water brush to it, I'm really just going to be just lightly passing over the colour. It's just mainly to blend everything in, not to make areas darker, but just to blend in so you don't see any pencil lines. I love this technique. It's really beginner friendly. It's a really neat and tidy way to watercolour, because all you really need is a paper towel to wipe your water brush off on. You don't need water jars or anything like that, because the water is in the barrel of the brush. And you can see how much depth I've been able to achieve around the face, under the paw, where I've given him a little bit of pink to show underneath. And this time with the larger dog, I'm going to start with the Christmas tree and start doing some shading there. I'm going to start with the light colour apple green and then bring in that leaf green underneath. In fact, I think I'll start with the leaf green because I like to do my shadows first. And when I'm painting in watercolour, I really like to get my darks in and then be very aware to reserve the lights. And then you can always adjust your mid-tones from then on. You can see it's just scribble that I'm doing here really, because all of these line marks will disappear as soon as I touch the water brush to this ink. It moves really quickly and beautifully on watercolour paper. See the vibrancy coming in with that leaf green. It's just gorgeous. So this is the first layer, and I'll probably come back in and do some more glazing over this layer by adding a little bit more pencil and doing extra blending, and that will intensify the shadow and intensify the colour as well. This is a lovely image to colour too, because the line work shows you exactly where the shading should be, where the shadows are, and that makes it really simple. The darkest shadows are probably in behind this bow here, and just under the baubles on the tree and under the branches where it transitions from the apple green to leaf green. Now I'm bringing in baked earth on this beautiful little Cocker Spaniel dog. Isn't he gorgeous? And again, I'm going to put in the shading for the darkest shadows, and I'm going to reserve the lights, particularly around the face, on the muzzle, around the eyes. They're going to be quite light. And on that leg that's facing forward, that's catching a bit more light, and on the top of the paw that is on the present. So here's the first round of colouring. You can see me using a circular shape around the muzzle and around the eyes, and that will help that face to appear more rounded, and lighter on the belly and that leg that's coming forward. And here's the red bow in poppy red. And you can see how much the colour intensifies as soon as it hits the water. It's just beautiful to work with. And there's no mess with this. There's no mess on your paper. You can see I just blotted away a little bit of area where I went outside the lines. And as long as it's still wet, you can blot it up. Once it's dry, however, it's very hard to move any of this colour, so be aware of that. And this lovely sea blue I thought would make a lovely vivid colour for this gift. And I'm really focusing on the shadows under the ribbon here. So the darkest darks will be in those places right there, and just pulling them out with water gives it a really lovely contrast and shows that there is a shadow. And I want to bring that same sea blue into the baubles. And I'm going to maintain a circle of white just there, which will be like a highlight on the bauble itself to make it look like it's a bit shiny. And with the smaller bauble at the top, I will do something similar with the highlight in exactly the same spot, but it's a smaller highlight because it's a smaller bauble. And now for the red bow, using the poppy red and activating it with the water. Now I'm ready for the extra glazing on the first card. So I'm just repeating the process of colouring in the darks, So all those areas on the stamp that have a lot of lines drawn are generally the dark areas. And I'm still maintaining those lighter areas on the face, on the muzzle, on the leg that's facing forward. And I'm making a shadow under the bauble and a shadow at the bottom of the presents. And just very lightly touching some water to that. I just want it to remain dark. And you can see with each layer how the colour intensifies even more. And there he is with the colouring finished. And the final glaze now for the Cocker Spaniel. Intensifying the darks. Retaining the highlights. And with the Cocker Spaniel, I did add a little bit of Tangerine because I felt that this dog was a more ginger colour and I wanted to have a little bit more brightness in his coat. So I brought in Tangerine as well. I didn't use the Tangerine on the other dog except for the little gold piece on the top of the ornament. And I'll be using Tangerine on the very top of the ornaments in this card as well. But I'll do that at the end. Intensifying the blue, adding some shadows at the bottom. And then evening it out with some water. And now I'm adding the top of the baubles with the Tangerine. And there's the dog finished. And I'm checking that the intensity in both of them is about the same level of intensity through those glazes that I did. Now I'm folding some black card bases and I'm going to mount this piece on top. And in order for it to have a nice border, I just like to mark off about 1/4 inch all the way around with a pencil and then put it into the trimmer. And I figured out that I wanted to take a little bit more off the right-hand side of the dog so that he would be sitting a little bit more central. And I love how that's layered up. I'm going to attach this panel with high-tack Express It tape. You could also use foam tape to adhere this. I wouldn't want to put any glue that was too liquid on here because it might start to buckle the paper. We haven't used a lot of water on this card at all, so I don't want to get the waterpaper card too wet. Look how great that looks with the black border around it. It really picks up the black pencil lines. And I'll be making another plain panel just to sit inside the cards and just attaching that in the same way that I attached the front, so that I'll be able to write inside the card. The other thing about having a panel like this means that your card isn't top heavy and doesn't fall over when you put it on the mantelpiece. Now I brought in my coloured envelopes. These are Quill envelopes. I have them in brights, in pastels and in neons. So I brought in a neon green, which matches that apple green, and a lovely bright red for the red in the bows on the Christmas tree. I hope you enjoyed today's project. If you did enjoy the project today, please give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. I'll see you again next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.